The Parkinson's Disease Journey, Part 1. I still have Parkinson's disease. My specialist told me I always will. But I don't suffer from the illness anymore. And that's the difference. Despite everything medical that was going wrong for me then, my life is now back to normal. Actually, a little better than normal. I'm one of thousands who have transformed their health. But I still feel blessed. Let me tell you how this turnaround happened. A shock diagnosis. I'd first gone to my doctor with concerns about, of all things, my balance. My muscles had been feeling increasingly stiff and I'd been feeling unsteady on my feet for a long time. When a friend noticed a slight shaking in my left arm, I knew I had to see someone about it. It took a number of mental and physical tests for specialists to confirm the worst. But once it was confirmed, I went into a state of absolute shock. The specialist spelled out the long-term possibilities for me. But however much of a positive spin he tried to put on the diagnosis, it all ended in the same place: therapies, drugs, specialist care. And the never-ending falling apart that comes with a degenerative brain disease. I was on a downward slope to goodness knows what. Of course, now that I'm off that downward slope, I feel very different about things. But I admit that I went into a miserable slump. I really didn't take in much of what they were telling me. All I could see was a person old before their time, having to rely on others to help me perform even my most personal functions. I had never thought about my life ending up like that. For weeks I was just too upset to think or do anything. An overnight change. Then one morning I woke up and I felt completely different about it. I was angry instead. I was filled with a sense of injustice. Why me? How did I come to deserve this? I was furious. I started to research Parkinson's disease like a person possessed. And quickly discovered there's a lot of information out there. Too much, in fact. Some of it quite complex. Some of it frustratingly contradictory. And some of it is just plain wrong. After 3 weeks of searching, I stumbled, quite by accident, on something that was the turning point in my struggle with the disease. In fact, what I found out turned my health, and my life, completely around. I'm going to tell you now what made the difference. And it's all based on why we get this horrible condition in the first place. Why do we get this illness? Parkinson's disease is a degenerative brain illness. Why does our brain health start to degenerate? It degenerates due to a loss of nerve cells, in a part of the brain called the substantia nigra. These nerve cells in the substantia nigra manufacture a neurotransmitter called dopamine, but as the nerve cells die off, less dopamine is created. We need dopamine. The loss of dopamine leads to the loss of body control, and leads to a whole cascade of other physical and mental symptoms, that combine to steadily ruin a person's life. There's a simple, well-understood trail from good health to Parkinson's. Nerve cells dying off in the substantia nigra. Greater than reduced dopamine production. Greater than Parkinson's disease. However, almost all modern-day medical treatments start at step 2, reduce dopamine. We're trying to increase dopamine. Which sounds sensible at first. But the problem is that we're tackling a disease that has already started. And we're not addressing it at the point of its underlying cause. It's like being in a sinking boat and constantly bailing out the water, instead of fixing the leak. We can bail for so long. And then we sink. The reason why most people eventually get so ill with this condition, is because almost no treatments tackle step 1, the dying of the substantia nigra cells. Yet doesn't it make sense to address the initial cause of this dreadful condition? Of course it does. I've learned a lot about this disease. And here's the main thing I learned, and then proved to myself. We have choices about how this condition plays out. In fact, medical scientists have proved that many people with a genetic disposition to this, never get it. While others with no genetic disposition at all still get full-on Parkinson's, that ravages their mental health quickly and remorselessly. It's not genetics. It's a basic illness with recognized causes. Remember, the substantia nigra produces dopamine. It's the loss of substantia nigra nerve cells that leads to the loss of dopamine. And that loss of dopamine leads to Parkinson's disease. So the big question is, Why on earth is the substantia nigra losing those dopamine producing cells in the first place? I was shocked to discover that we already know why we are losing those priceless, life-giving substantia nigra cells. Yet still do almost nothing about it. And now I know why we don't. There are 8 main factors leading to Parkinson's. Some have a small effect. A couple are huge. Together they're essential in beating this horrible condition. In truth, some of them my healthcare center already acted on. For example, they prescribed dopamine-enhancing drugs. For sure, I needed more dopamine. I had tests and underwent occupational therapy. Again, good stuff, it helped me manage my problems with balance, movement, stiffness. But I also realized they were not helping me to avoid the worst symptoms of this disease. At best, they were just delaying it. Yet that's what I wanted most, to not end up with my own personal Parkinson's horror story, which is why I went headlong into my own research about my illness, and, eventually, found my way out. Stay tuned for part 2.